Hey, this is D Knight.
This is Carol.
And Ty is missing in action, but for good reason. Yeah, I know. We're heartbroken. We try to put off recording the podcast as long as possible this week because we knew there'd be a verdict imminent. And here it is. And guess what, guys? Guilty. All 34 counts. Every single count. We got his ass. Look, everyone's excited at this point.
I asked him to cue it up, but he didn't. So I was just trying to, the show must go on, you know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I wouldn't feel right playing 04 Tuna without the whole band together. It seems like that's an event for the entirety of the crew here, but,
can't spell entirety without Ty. I mean, you can, but you can't say it.
You can spell entire without Ty. But yes, guilty on all 34 counts. The jury deliberated over the course of a couple of days. They asked for a couple of noteworthy pieces of information from the court, starting with they needed some information about Cohen's testimony, David Pecker's testimony. That was probably the most important part, where they needed to corroborate Cohen's testimony.
They needed some other clarifications, right? And they had some parts read back to them.
Yeah, they needed some clarifications.
I can't believe they said that. We need to get them to say that again. Like, I need to hear that again.
They needed a little clarification on the jury instructions, basically starting from the part where you could infer that if the ground is wet and people are carrying umbrellas and such, that it rained over the course of the night. You don't have to have direct evidence to infer such. And, that kind of put us on the course to expect a conviction in this case because, there was very, very little direct evidence in terms of Trump's intent, but you could infer from the testimony of the others involved, along with the checks and invoices that Trump signed off on to reimburse Cohen for the payments to Stormy Daniels. I feel like I'm doing this all wrong. Let's rewind. Bigger picture here. Trump's convicted, 34 criminal counts. There's no escaping the criminal verdict. What does this mean for the Republican Party going forward in an election year?
Well, I mean, it's really kind of, I have to preface everything by being like, if it weren't such a shit show in reality, it would be funny. But if it weren't such a shit show in reality, it would be such a joy to see all of these guys lining up to like pander to a convicted felon. And they'd be like, is he really quote unquote guilty? Like, what does guilty even mean? This is a a miscarriage of justice. And we're going to prosecute it as an abortion. It'd be funnier if it wasn't so dark and sad.
That is the funniest thing you've ever said.
That's not true.
Oh my God, that was good. I just wasn't expecting that. They're going to prosecute it as an abortion. All right. Yeah, look, it's unfortunate for the Republican Party. I mean, no one wants their candidate convicted of a crime about stealing an election, headed into an election. It's just not the way you want to do business.
If only they could have seen this coming and picked someone else.
I mean, they had an entire primary to try and work that out.
If only they'd had 4 years and many, many chances to offer a stern rebuke.
Theoretically, they had 8 years if you count 2016 as well. And look, I guess the place to start with this is why is the Republican Party even in this position in the first place, where they're now running a convicted felon at the top of the ticket? Part of the problem is, and they knew in 2017 with the announcement of the appointment of Robert Mueller and the Russia investigation of the Trump campaign, and that they should have gotten off the bandwagon then. That was the time to pull the trigger on getting Trump out of office. You let Mike Pence finish out the rest of the term. They would have lucked into COVID. And I say luck like it's in quotation marks. I'm not saying that the event of a pandemic was luck. But if you do remember, in 2020, Mike Pence was officially put in charge of managing the public side of the COVID response. And he did all things considered, reasonably not disastrous job of handling those press conferences until
Yeah,
Trump
but
got
so he
jealous
was
and took
only
over.
in charge with the communications, though.
Yeah, but again, he was like the spokesperson, right? And
So he
he
did a
would,
reasonably good job in like Trump COVID response in the same sentence.
yeah, I know it's not, that's not really what I'm saying is being the public face of it, he would have been a much more manageable person and likely would have cruised the reelection in 2020. And, Republicans would have been looking at him as a Reagan-esque figure. Instead, they got pot committed to Trump in the Russia investigation. And with all the information that revealed, because they stuck with him, they doomed themselves.
He
And
knew a little bit. He had a little bit of dirt on them, and now there's no undirting them from the dirt.
no, yeah, they've.
There's the second funniest thing I've ever said.
I appreciate that. Like the Republican Party is now Bruno Mars at the blackjack table in Vegas, right? They've put so much money invested so much into this guy that they can't pull themselves away, and now they're on tilt and they don't know what to do. But even though they had an opportunity in 2020, after the attack on the Capitol on January 6th,
Chance after chance, that was early 2021.
2021, rather, you're right. They had opportunity after opportunity to get off the Trump train, and because they chose not to, now that they're in a position where they're doomed in 2024, no matter what they do, because this effectively kills their chances of Trump winning the election. And theoretically, if I were the Illuminati operating behind the scenes of the Republican Party or whatever the organization is you want to call it that pulls the strings, I don't know. It's just I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm just saying if I were a power broker in the Republican Party, I would dump Trump immediately, take your losses in 2024, try and find the new leader of the Republican Party going forward, and then you just trot him out there every day of 2024. Basically trying to heal the party, bring it back together, and take your chances in 2028. But Republicans can't do that. They're stuck with Trump. They're going to support him. He's probably going to receive his sentencing in July on the 11th, I believe. And, in all likelihood, given his behavior at the trial, attacking the judge's daughter, attacking the witnesses, attacking the jury, attacking the trial itself, multiple violations of gag orders, falling asleep, just saying obnoxious things in court. The judge is going to be able to take all of that behavior into account in his sentencing. And before
certainly a normal defendant.
Totally normal.
Facing the maximum penalty possible, which was still only 4 years, right?
Yeah. So the maximum penalty for each of these counts is 4 years.
But they run simultaneously.
Yeah, they'll run consecutively.
No.
Or rather concurrently. They won't run consecutively. I'm sorry.
Me too. I'm sorry that they're not going to run concurrently.
Yeah, also. But
he probably only has 4 years left. Fewer if he's in jail.
Hope. But the judge could, order a minimum sentence of no incarceration, maybe some probation, maybe some community service. But I think in all likelihood, if you take all of Trump's behavior into account, along with the civil judgments, he's probably going to get 6 months to a year of some sort of confinement, whether that be home confinement or incarceration. I mean, I know, and this is not me being optimistic. A lot of people accuse me of always being in the tank for the Democrats and selling opium and all that good stuff. Like I said previously, I didn't think
some of that.
You want some opium?
Yeah.
You trying to snort it up or you trying to fire it up, yo? But no, I previously said that I didn't think Trump was going to see any amount of jail time, and I've changed my opinion based on new evidence of Trump's behavior at the trial and the judge being sick of his shit and wanting to send a message. But the thing is, if Trump is somehow sentenced to some sort of incarceration, even if it's a year of home confinement, that runs through the election, should his appeals take place before then, the election's over, and there are going to be a lot of largely unforeseeable consequences, but a number of foreseeable consequences. First and foremost being, obviously, a lot of Republicans no matter how much they love Trump, they're not going to want to vote for a felon. And that's going to be enough to make the difference in the 2024 election, generally speaking. But also, there are going to be a number of other large, important problems created for the Republican Party outside of just, depressing the Republican vote. And for starters, we're talking about them dollar bills, yo.
They're running out of money, right?
They're already running out of money. And now that you've got a convicted felon at the top of the ticket, the juice that was keeping the campaign.
That convicted felon.
Yeah, Donald Trump, convicted felon.
Conviction.
He's going from The Apprentice to 60 days in lockup. And, once Melania leaves, he'll be on Love After Lockup. But so one of the problems the Republican Party is going to have is egging these.
They have this voter in the theoretical swing state of Florida who was just convicted of 34 felony counts, and he might not be able to vote for himself, and they're going to lose that Republican male vote. The one.
I think because he's been convicted in New York, that Florida has the option of honoring New York state law and still allowing convicted felons to vote. So, there is that possibility. But back to the larger issue at hand, the money. So the billionaire class, as much as they hate paying taxes, as much as they hate Biden's Build Back Better, as much as they hate the green energy plan, it's really tough to look at a candidate that is almost with certainty going to lose the election and fork over the hundreds of millions of dollars needed to run an election effectively. The other problem is they're already in the hole. So the Republican Party, and specifically Trump's campaign, already needs more money than a campaign would otherwise. But there's also yet another layered issue on top of that. And it's the Trump tax, right? Because effectively, a huge percentage of Trump's money is going towards funding his legal defense, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. So, say you donate $500 million to the Trump campaign, a good $100 million of that minimum is going to Trump's legal defense fund. So really, you're only getting $400 million of effective campaign money going to the Trump campaign. Now, beyond that, you've got the second Trump tax of, everybody's got to get their fingers wet, right? You got to pay off the grift. So if you donate $500 million to the Trump campaign, $100 million is going towards his legal defense. Probably got another $100 million going towards.
Plus, don't forget all the new crimes he's doing. It's like a pyramid scheme of crime. I know we've talked about the crime pyramid scheme, not just the conspiracy, but this is how the real trickle down works. He does crimes, and then the donation requirements trickle down to the base.
Yes, this is Republicans discovering how trickle down economics actually works through the Trump campaign. But yes, so first of all, you got to fund Trump's grift. That's going to cost you another $100 million for every $500 million. So you've effectively spent $200 million greasing Trump's pocket and paying for his legal defense. And then, of course, there's incompetent people running his campaign, incompetent people running his PAC. He's got his own family in charge of the RNC now. So that's yet another layer of incompetence. And you've seen the way Trump organizes his legal defense. His campaign strategy is even more haphazard and ineffective. So for dollar, what you would get in the Biden campaign, you probably have to spend 5 times that just for a similar level of effectiveness in the Trump campaign. So, and look, despite what you may think about your average billionaire, they're not total fucking morons. Yeah, they might be out of touch with reality. They might live in a level of just like narcissistic sociopathy that the average person can't really relate to, but they're not complete idiots, and they see the writing is on the wall, and no one's going to want to fork up a massive fortune to try and get this dude over the hump when he's been convicted of 34 felonies. And then who knows, even if he does somehow win the election, what a second Trump term would look like if he does win. probably be utter chaos at this point because he'd be doing anything and everything to stay out of jail. And that's going to be messy, and that's going to cause problems for the economy. And it's just, look, he wouldn't be ineffective at running a government anyway, but spending all his time trying to stay out of prison would just end with utter chaos. And, hopefully, despite how much billionaires want their tax breaks, they're not willing to try and fund that into existence.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, he made it pretty clear, right? Didn't he directly solicit $1 billion donation? We talked about this last week.
Yes, he asked the oil barons for a literal $1 billion. He was like, "Give me $1 billion, and I'll
deregulate everything, and
it'll be worth $100 billion to you guys."
He made the explicit bribe and also the general implication that everything will be for sale.
Right.
And you can't sell enough in the pyramid scheme, as we were discussing earlier.
It's the Bernie Madoff problem. You always need more money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you got to keep going back.
You always need more suckers, and
yes, you got to hit up the new
more legal
suckers
fees.
to pay
You
off
got to pay
ones.
more legal fees. Except no one is making money from you. It's just legal fees.
Yeah.
No return on investment, only legal fee.
And look, maybe part of the reason Biden's economic numbers are looking so good is because Trump is pumping so much money into the legal area of the economy. I don't know, the law firms are making off quite well at this point. But so Trump's got a number of issues beyond the money and beyond the conviction as well now, because clearly Nikki Haley has been an issue here, siphoning off votes in the Republican primaries over the last few months here, even though she's long been out of the race. Although, for some reason, and I don't know the nature of this decision, right, but you look at the position she was in 2 weeks ago, where she's costing Trump hundreds of thousands of votes in multiple states. All you have to do is just sit there and not do anything and wait for this inevitable conclusion of Trump getting a guilty verdict in this New York case. And then you waltz into the Republican convention with all the leverage in the world, right? Now, maybe you can't necessarily get the convention to bump Trump off the ticket. Who knows? Because they're super pot committed at this point. But Trump's not winning the 2024 election without the anti-Trump voters that have turned to Nikki Haley to embody their resentment of what Donald Trump is. And the way you get those voters back, quite possibly, is including Haley on the ticket. You make her your VP. Well, Haley gave all that power away when she said a few days ago that she was endorsing Trump, or rather going to vote for Trump, which is a tacit endorsement. I don't understand the position she was in, like with the chess moves on the board. It was set up for her to just stand pat. Like that was the best possible decision for her, to just SCFU, not say anything, not do anything. You have all the leverage in the world, and she gave that away. I don't know. Maybe there's like the Nikki Haley sex tape out there. Maybe they found a way to.
I mean, we all knew she would eventually endorse him. Didn't she say the same shit last time?
We all knew she would, but we didn't know when she would. And there is a point in time where a Nikki Haley endorsement of Trump could have bought her everything. Like I said, it probably could have bought her a vice presidential spot. And instead, she spent that capital at the least convenient time. It was
I guess I assumed she would do it not because it was like a good idea for her, but because she damn it.
Yeah, she should have waited until the time it was most politically expedient.
Yeah, but I was saying it's not out of political expedience. It's because like her character is just like she vacillates wildly on her beliefs and or has none.
Yeah, I was going to say,
just like, I'm not surprised because I'm like, oh, because she's like she's totally disingenuous and insincere on all fronts, and this is just like all a fucking game to all of them.
Are you implying on some level that Nikki Haley has no principles? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, those are the words.
Well, yeah, we knew that, right? I mean, this is a woman who changed her name and basically her entire heritage to kind of fit in with polite white society. You know, to some degree, it worked out well for you. She worked her way all the way up to the governor of South Carolina somehow. Um, but again, much like Trump's tactics, like the same going to your bag, doing the same old thing only gets you so far. And again, I just a poor decision on her part, poor timing. I mean, I get the decision to some degree. Like we all knew she was going to do it eventually, but like just the least convenient timing for her own personal benefit, which means you have to like when people start making decisions that seem like they're operating on perverse incentives, you really have to wonder what the machinations are behind the scenes that are motivating people to make those kinds of decisions. But um, again, you
I
know,
mean,
this is
it's
long.
all like pretty short-sighted self-interest, usually.
Yeah, but I mean, we have no idea.
Depends how fucked they are. That's kind of my idea. Like, depending on how fucked they generally think they are, they're the most short-sighted. And the Nikki Haley is a little less, she seems a little less fucked in terms of like dirt other people have on her than the other. So she's like a little less desperate and short-sighted. She has a little bit longer game, but as you said, she's not like particularly politically savvy either.
She is in some ways, in other ways, not so much. She's not a she's not a MAGA moron, right? So, apart from that, kudos to Alvin Bragg. You did your job, sir. We got a lot of receipts out there on the internet of people shitting all over you when you brought these charges, saying it was a horrible idea and like, how dare you? And it's a shame that these charges are being brought. And then how dare this go to trial first? Like it's a travesty to our democracy. And as it turns out, you the boss, sir. Your trial was absolutely riveting from beginning to end, and you really set the stakes, laying out the narrative of the election interference in 2016. And the jury saw that as rather important as well. And now we've got our first and likely only conviction of Donald Trump in 2024. So kudos to you. F all the haters. As you're all aware, if you're listening to this podcast, I was a proponent of, I think I said this immediately, like our first couple of episodes.
Like this would
Trump,
be the most likely to get him.
no, not that, but I was a fan. I was a proponent of the idea of Trump's committed so many crimes, charge him with literally any one of them, and he'll be convicted for a number of reasons, but largely because he's a sociopath, can't control his own behavior, and then his lawyers are totally incompetent. And I'm not saying, in this case, his lawyer, largely Todd Blanche, did most of the trial work here. I'm not saying that Todd Blanche is incompetent per se, but I don't think he was in a position.
I think more impotent in this position.
Definitely.
No, it's not like a dig at him, but like what could you do with that case?
I think there were some decisions that were made that weren't to the benefit of the ultimate verdict. That had maybe, you know, they taken different tacks, they likely could have gotten a hung jury. But I mean, that's a debate for another day since we don't have time to delve into that. But part of the problem is, you know, Trump demands him. He demands his.
They had a cooperative client.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is also the client, right? So
they can't coach him; he won't listen. Like,
and then he makes determinations about the trial strategy that maybe a more effective lawyer wouldn't do. And then, you know, when you're going up against effective team of prosecutors and you get painted into a corner rather, there's really not any recourse. But yes, kudos to the legal team. Thank you, Alvin Bragg. Thank you, Manhattan DA's office. You did fantastic work. Onto the news punditry here. A lot of people's mad, and I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm talking about, you know, what you would typically consider more left-leaning outlets and left-leaning journalists and left-leaning punditry. They are salty, and you know, I won't
how
sugarcoat it here.
salty were they?
Well, I won't sugarcoat it here. You had like Katie Turr practically crying on air. You know, it's unfortunate. We all know not largely thanks to Michael Cohen, but thanks to Michael Cohen confirming it for us. Katie Tur's in the bag for Trump, and she was heartbroken about this conviction. And I get it to some degree that her career largely depended. Well, the place she is now, currently in her career, she could not have made it to without Trump, right? She basically hit the lottery. Because I feel like in 2015, her career was practically over, and no one took Trump seriously at the time. And they were like, "Hey, this is like a dead end, a dead end for a journalist to be assigned to the Trump campaign. Let's go ahead and give it to Katie Tur." And then it just so happens this dude runs through the entire Republican Party. Katie Tur's there the entirety of the time, and it propels her to the place that she is now. And that's largely a result of her coverage of the Trump campaign, which she happened to luck into because no one thought highly enough of her to give her a legitimate assignment. And just works out that way sometimes, dims the brakes. She was quite pissed. A number of other
is it a legitimate? What has it been a legitimate assignment though? Has it? Has she been approaching this subject matter with the critical eye that it requires?
Okay, guilty. Right.
Anyway,
yes,
but I digress.
Right, fair enough.
I digress.
Maggie Haberman, she's salty. Once the verdict came down, she basically cut off her Twitter account. I think she quote tweeted one thing in the hour since. Again, another person. I guess Trump won't allow her to tweet anything about the actual verdict that he doesn't approve. So maybe that's why she's keeping quiet. But look, a lot of your favorite MSNBC hosts, and, I don't have to name names here. If you follow the coverage, you can see who's salty. The people who are continuing to try and portray Trump as some kind of, he's still appears to be some kind of viable candidate in 2024. Like if you're an MSNBC host and you're pushing that narrative, that's a dead giveaway. Trump's doomed. Like, I know they need him. You need him for ratings, guys, but it's time. It's time to get off the bandwagon. Like, there's no point in diminishing your credibility by continuing to try and push him as some sort of legitimate challenge to the Biden campaign. Now, I know over the course of the next couple of weeks, you're probably going to see some kind of bump in Trump's fundraising. Because, as per the usual, he grifts off of these major news events. But once the novelty of the conviction wears off and the small dollar donors, those funds dry up, it's going to be pretty self-evident that the Trump campaign is doomed. Now, I don't know what the polling will say, and a lot of punditry out there, they follow the polls extraordinarily closely. I typically find them to be largely useless. There's maybe a handful of polls that I might look at in terms of, like, not for predictive purposes necessarily about what will happen in 2024 November here, but more in terms of, say, Trump's Biden are polling at certain numbers in March. And then you check back in April, and now there's been a shift, 1 point, 2 points this way. Okay. Well, that's not necessarily anything super novel. You come back in May. All right. Well, there's been another shift. It's 2 more points. Biden's closing the gap. Now it's 49-49. You're like, oh, it's even. All right. Now there's been a conviction. You check back in June. All right. Biden's up 2 points. All right. Check back in July. Biden's up 4 points. Now, you can't necessarily take that as some kind of indication that Biden's certainly going to win the election in November. But what you can say is that,
especially since, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 of those months you mentioned have not yet occurred.
This is theoretical. I'm just saying,
okay, like, this is
Carol. I'm just saying that you can take that as evidence that real life events are having an impact on polls, and you can tell what direction things are moving in. And that is how you take, your approach to the campaign as far as like the Biden campaign is concerned. I was just giving some examples on theoretically how polls can be useful because they're not predictive at all. And in fact, if you've been looking, the primary results were very strongly indicative of Biden's strength and Trump's weakness because say what you want, like about Dean Phillips, RFK Jr. and the like. There were options on the ballot. And if people really wanted to come out and protest, vote Biden from the left or whatever, they could have done so. It's not the case. The enthusiastic voters showed up to vote for Joe Biden. You can't say the same in the Republican Party because while Trump was wiping the floor with Nikki Haley eventually, she did show a lot of Trump's weaknesses, right? You know, people, what we were looking for from the news media to attack Biden for on the left actually happened in the Republican primary. So it's all downhill for Trump here at this point. And fingers crossed, like I'm not saying get complacent, but what I am saying is if you turn out to vote, Biden's almost certainly going to win. Now, don't take that as some kind of indication that you can take off the next 6 months and not focus on this. You gotta.
No, I'm going to annoy the shit out of you until I get confirmation that you voted. So.
Absolutely.
And I'll make more. There'll be more like me. We're everywhere.
We're everywhere.
Trying to get you to vote.
That's right. You tell them, Carol. But yeah, we just wanted to revel in the moment. You know, shout out to all the Black Americans holding Trump accountable because it's a lot of, you know, Caucasian Americans, no offense to you Caucasians listening, that are floundering. Y'all did not get the assignment. Y'all didn't understand what was supposed to be going on here. Yeah, you know, letting Trump skate in Florida, basically, holding up progress in Georgia, putting Trump back on the ballot in Colorado. Whole lot of L's. But we finally got the W, at least one of the W's we were looking for. And it is a pivotal moment. Like there's no way around it. Anyone trying to minimize it at this point is doing so out of either some form of self-interest or self-delusion. I mean, of course, you've got like the right-wing nut jobs. Like, what are they going to say? Like, you know, you work for the Biden campaign or you're a prominent Republican. You can't get out here and say this is bad for Trump. You got to say it's awesome. This criminal conviction on 34 counts. It's awesome for Trump. Congratulations, Democrats. You just sealed Trump's victory in November, right? You got to spew the company line because you don't have a choice. What are you going to say? We're doomed. There's no point in showing up to vote now. Like they don't have any options. But, you know, also kudos to Michael Cohen. Well, no, I guess largely kudos to Stormy Daniels. Ma'am, you are a champion. I think is one of our favorite cohorts from the Mueller She Wrote podcast. What's Allison's co-host name? I didn't forget. I'm so tired. It's late. Oh no.
Yeah, so what happened was I didn't understand we were still going to record and Dee was waiting for me. And now I'm bringing my full attention that I can give at 1:15 a.m.
All right. So this is so embarrassing that I can't remember her name, even though I love her dearly.
And I also don't know the name.
Jesus Christ, man. Dana Goldberg. So Dana Goldberg posted on the platform formerly known as Twitter. Thanks Stormy Daniels for taking one for the team. And in quotation marks, it was 1 inch. But yes, thank you, Stormy Daniels, for your fine work. You somehow found a way to make sure Trump got convicted while also getting him off. Also, kudos to you, Michael Cohen, for doing your part. Your mea culpa is complete as far as I'm concerned. You've done your duty, sir. You served your time. You turned on Trump. You never turned back. You make sure he was held accountable in every way that you possibly could. You cooperated with the Mueller investigation. You've cooperated with Jack Smith, I do believe, and you cooperated with the Manhattan DA's investigation. You cooperated with the New York AG's office in their investigation of Trump's financial crimes. You're redeemed in my book. I mean, obviously there are going to be some complaints about Michael Cohen's past behavior. And that's fine. He could always screw up in the future. But as far as I'm concerned, he's done as much as anyone could possibly do in his position to make sure Trump is held accountable. And we got the victory, at least as far as these criminal counts are concerned. With November still to be seen at this point. But before we get out of here, Carol, closing thoughts? Anything you wanted to, or not even closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to quote the last president of the United States here, who said, "The real verdict will come in November."
Yeah. They've been saying a lot of insane shit today. No, sir, this was the real verdict. I'm sorry.
I'm hoping that will be. We're going to see if we're having an elections as court. I hope you'll be, public opinion, whatever other court he needs after this, it's fucking guilty.
Yeah, if elections are a verdict, sir, the real verdict was 2020. You already lost. Like, you lost already. This isn't new. Like, you're going to continue losing.
Anyway, I agree that it's funny. There's been so many nails in his coffin and he just keeps getting the fuck up. That's,
yeah, but it's like Weekend at Bernie's at this point. This is a corpse that just happens to be dancing around to insane tunes and doing hilarious stuff on camera. Yeah. Well, I guess technically it's more like Weekend at Bernie's too.
Anyway, as long as we're vigilant, we can keep this motherfucker where he belongs, out of the White House, and hopefully, staying in jail. I want to have more than a couple months of him in jail before he's our president again, out of jail. No, thank you, jail president. Excuse me, is our new president-elect ready for the inauguration? No, I'm sorry, we're still filing his discharge papers.
Well, as far as Trump's chances of going to jail, theoretically, if the Supreme Court doesn't bail him out with some kind of ruling that gives him immunity for the crimes that he committed while he's in office, if he loses the election, he is going to prison. Like, it's inevitable that he's convicted in DC. I mean, and theoretically, if Judge Cannon is still on the case, if the Florida documents case goes to trial, she could find a way to tank that. But if she manages to make an appealable ruling before then, she'll get appealed to the 11th Circuit. They're going to take her out of the case. Trump's going to be convicted in that trial too. Just the problem is those trials won't happen until 2025. And then I know we don't talk about this enough, but there are a number of other state cases out there going after the co-conspirators and the fake elector plot and the other plots to overturn the 2020 election. Theoretically, those states could also indict Trump for his role in those states as well. So he could be facing unpardonable jail time. But again, all of this hinges on Trump losing the 2024 election. And that is why, regardless of how you feel about this conviction and his chances for the presidency, you still got to go show up to vote in November. You got to go to the ballot box, hit that Joe Biden button, or, however it is you handle your elections in your local municipality. But you got to get Biden in office. Otherwise, dude is going to raise hell going after his political enemies and doing whatever he can to stay out of prison. We all got to make sure that doesn't happen, and it's up to you. Put on your Biden 2024 t-shirt, your Biden Harris 2024 t-shirt.
Get some aviators.
Yeah, grab some ice cream, and then
put in your burning red laser contact eyes.
Yeah, go all dark Brandon, full dark Brandon on them. Hit that Biden button in November of 2024, and that concludes this episode of Part of the Insurrection.